Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Aliyin podcast. It is, as usual, your host, Ali Adnan Rada, with one of my co hosts.
Ali Hamid Zaidi.
And today we're delighted to welcome, I want to say perhaps the most athletic guest on our podcast so far. Hopefully, there are more to come. I actually wanted to invite someone else earlier or prior to this, quite famous. He'll come on eventually, and you'll be pleased to know, without naming, because the element of surprise or whatever the heck. You'd be surprised to know that the person in question is being coached by our guest today. So it brings me great pleasure to introduce to you our guest for today. In fact, our guest for today can introduce themselves. So, Tanya, please take it away.
Hey everyone, I am Tanya, and well, first and foremost, I look at myself as a footballer, and I'm also a lot into fitness, and I daylight as an investment banker.
Okay, nice.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, um, so I guess the first question really becomes, why'd you get into football?
Okay.
Why'd you-
All right. So, well, when I was 13, 14, my older cousin brother, he used to live in the same building as me. So he would take me down, he would take me below the building, he would make me stand in front of the wall, and he would shoot the ball at me. And that was terrifying. That was absolutely terrifying. But that's how I got into football. So watching the kids around the area, they started gathering and we made our own group. We started playing every day in the evening, and that was basically what I did after school every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
In
So,
fact,
yeah, go ahead. No,
okay,
no, go ahead.
in fact, during school, my best friend, who also grew up playing football in Karama, and I grew up playing in Bardwai, right? So we both got together and we wrote a letter along with a bunch of other girls in school. We wrote a letter to the supervisor and we started our first girls team as well.
Lovely. In your
Wow.
school.
Yes, in our school.
It's lovely. That's nice. That's great.
Yeah.
So your school didn't have a girls' team before this?
No,
And
we
when
did
are we
not.
talking about? What year is this?
So this was back in 2013. No,
Uh,
not 2013, sorry, around 2010.
2010. Okay, yeah, that makes more
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
More sense.
yeah.
I think over the years, hopefully, fingers crossed, schools have progressed now, right? I think there are athletics teams for more or less all sports for both genders now, correct?
There are, yes,
More or
and
less, yeah.
a lot more tournaments. Back
Lovely.
then we had
Lovely.
like just a few, like a handful of tournaments throughout the year, but now
Mm.
all throughout the year. So yeah,
That's good. That's
yeah.
good. So you basically got into football as a kid and just have not stopped playing since. That's basically the gist of it.
Except when I was injured, no, I haven't.
Okay,
Fair enough.
that's fair
Let,
enough.
let, let, let's deep dive into the injuries now.
We could,
What have
yeah.
you broken? What have you not broken so far? Touch wood.
So I was a very clumsy kid. I had no sense of equilibrium. One of the first injuries was an ankle fracture
Mm.
on my right leg. Yeah, and this was literally exactly 24 hours before our qualifiers for nationals.
No.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Ugh.
But you
So
said
third
nationals?
nationals. Yeah.
I want to talk about that
Um.
later. But continue on your train of thought right now.
Okay. So on 3rd December at 8 in the morning, we were supposed to have our nationals, and on 2nd December morning, during a practice before nationals, I fractured my ankle, a hairline fracture, and I was out for that season. That was like the worst. So that was one of my starting injuries. And then skipping all the small ones, ankle twist and all of that, skipping all of that. I've had two other major ones. ACL injury, in which I tore my ACL and meniscus in the
Oh,
knee, main ligaments in the knee. And I had to undergo surgery to reconstruct both of them. So yeah.
I've
Fun
seen
life.
ACL and meniscus tears. It's the most horrible thing on the planet, especially when it's like I've seen like those operations as well. I'm like, oh God.
It's a footballer's worst nightmare. Yeah.
How long were you out for when you
Yeah.
tore your ACL and your meniscus,
Um,
respectively or combined? How long were you out for?
so the first time around, I tore my ACL and meniscus together.
Oh my
This was
God.
back in 2018.
This
And
happened
again, this was
multiple
like
times?
twice.
La hawla wa la quwwata illa
Twice.
billah. Okay. And then?
Was
So
it the same
this
knee?
same knee. Yep.
Ew. Oh, if it were right
Lessons
and
to be
left, I would have
learned.
been fine. But oh God.
Oh, actually, we
Yeah.
learned a lesson. Yeah. I mean, well, the surgeon, he kind of messed up my surgery the first time around, and he used a very old technique. Like, without telling me,
Oh.
he put a metallic screw into my knee, and I'm like, what?
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, and my rehab was pretty messed up as well because I picked the wrong coach.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a mistake. Had I not done that the first time, I there wouldn't have been a second time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
because
would have been
usually
perfect. Yeah.
ACL and meniscus tears have what a 6 to 8 month recovery time normally.
So an ACL tear has 6 to 8 months
Yeah.
recovery. However, if it's ACL and meniscus together,
Oh yeah.
it's 9 to 12 months. So back in
Uh,
2018,
yep.
it was 9 to 12 months because and this was 3 days after my birthday, by the way.
Ew.
Right before tournament. So I went back home. I went back to India for the state qualifiers,
Mhm.
and it was right before the qualifiers again. I was out for 9 to 12 months, and it took me like a year to get back on the field. So yeah, that was the first time around. That was 2018. 2019, I got back. 2021, I tore again, and this time I went for the national qualifiers again. Funnily enough, I never get past them without an injury. So last year, that's in 2022 February, I got it reconstructed.
Mhm.
And since it was the second one, again, I had to be slower in my recovery. However, I recently got the green signal to get back on the field just last month.
Yay.
Lovely,
Yay!
lovely,
Yay.
Yeah.
lovely. Well, all's well that ends well, but I guess the number one most resounding question that I have at this point is, what is it like being off the field for a year? Because you're used to playing more or less regularly, right? If not more than just regularly. And then, I mean, to have that taken away from you, I think there's a lesson in it for all of us. How was it? How did it feel? And how did you cope?
So basically, since I've been playing since I was a kid, right? Football has been a very big part of my identity. Like I used to play in school, I used to play after school. It was always my dream to, play even after school, play for clubs, play for my hopefully back home one day. And that's always been like a big dream of mine. So
Happy
football kind of
Republic Day, by the way.
Happy
Oh yeah.
Republic
Back
Day.
for
Oh
back.
yeah. Happy.
So football became like a huge part of my identity. And with such a major injury, of course, I sort of had like an identity crisis.
Hmm.
So, thing is, I'm used to being so active. Like ever
Mm.
since I got into sports and fitness, I've been like super active. And suddenly you're on crutches and you
Yeah.
can't walk and you can't bend your leg at will. And oh my God, you spend hours and hours with the physio and at the gym. And I think one of the best things that's happened to me because of the injury is mental resilience. That's like
Yeah.
one of the main products.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the main things that comes out of an injury. Picture this: you are coming out of an existential crisis. So when that happens, right, when you go through something deep or traumatic, when you're out of it and the haze is off and you're looking at the world around you again, everything that's not important to you kind of trivializes. And
Mm.
that really helped me. It helped me
True.
focus, it helped me prioritize, and I knew what was important to me. And that's the only thing I would direct my efforts towards. So
Yeah.
the injury really helped me with that.
Even like any injury, to be honest, like especially when you're like out for 9 to 12 months, the mental psyche is just out of whack, to for
I
lack of a better
mean,
term.
day after day, you have to like go for physio. My physio, I started
Mm-hmm.
it back in March. Like Feb was my surgery. I started back in March, and it went on till December. So that's like 9 months of continuous physio. So it teaches the patient. It teaches the consistency. It's like
Mm-hmm.
consistency is what you need.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So talk us through the rehab, not as in like how you experienced it, but what is it like when you're in rehab and you're going through all of that? What's like the main things they focus on? What's the activities? What they start out with? Because a lot of people will deal with it differently, and they might have different ways of recovering from an injury. So you might have had some leg exercises, people might have some other thing, or depending on the injury again. So what was that for you, or what was it like the
Right.
process?
Okay. So so what happens before your surgery is that you're made to do a set of exercises. A lot of people tend to skip this, especially if there's like a gap between the injury and the surgery. A lot of people tend to skip these prehab exercises, but you're advised to do them so that you can build muscle, which
Mhm.
would later on protect and help you with faster recovery. Now, what happened the first time around was that nobody advised me on this
Mm,
properly. Like, I consulted like a bunch of people, but nobody gave me proper advice. And what ended up happening was my right leg was literally a stick, and my left leg was super muscular, and it looked so odd. And so that's something that one should always focus on. If you get an injury, it does not mean that you stop moving.
mhm,
You do not stop moving. You have to work around it, and you have to take preventative measures so that your rehab becomes a lot better.
Mm.
And now, what happened post surgery was I got back into physio, and I think one of the most humbling experiences for me has been learning how to walk all over again.
Mm.
I mean,
mhm.
it's something that we do in an autopilot mode. Like,
Yeah.
we don't require to think about how to walk, but at that point, it feels so odd for you to bend your leg and start, take your steps all over again. So that's been one of the most humbling experiences for me because, I would watch people all around me running and doing all kinds of things, and here I'm barely able to walk. And oh my God. So that's one thing, learning how to walk all over again. And another major thing that I have realized is in the different kinds of physios that people should always keep in mind. So
Mm.
now there are some physios who would, hook you up to machines,
Mm,
and the machines would kind of give vibrations to your leg, and they would be doing your physio. However, what you need is a physio who makes you exercise on your own. The
mhm,
stabilizer muscles in your body, they need to be able to carry your weight. They need to do the work. So always opt for a physio who makes you exercise rather than hooks you up to the machine. That's something I learned. And, it was
mhm.
a whole series. First, learning how to bend your leg, then walking, jogging, running, bearing weight, and maintaining that tension under load,
Mm.
progressive overload,
Yeah.
and, starting with the ball again, dribbling, shooting, passing. So yeah, it's been baby steps all along.
And
Yeah, because
this entire process takes up to a year, you said.
It depends. But for me,
Mm.
it was my second injury. So yeah, it took up to a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oof.
it's like more or less depending on how quick it's also like the whole biology of your physiology of the body. Because if you've got like muscle memory or something like that, you're like really fit, then the recovery time doesn't take that long. As I said, like they take 6 to 8 months. It's kind of like saying, for kind of an example, if like a wrestler, for example, injures himself, so they're already like built and fit and muscly, and so they've got that immune system, they've got that physiology, they've got that body work to recover from an injury quicker than most people at superhuman
That's true.
speeds.
You're saying higher frequency of injury reduces recovery time? Is that a thing?
Well, it's more of a wear and tear, I would say, depending on how, like, as Tanya said, she injured it like 2 times, right?
And the second time took longer.
Yeah, because obviously it's a second injury, and obviously because the first time it got screwed up, so obviously the second injury is going to take even more time to recover and obviously then repair itself from the first screw up,
Mm.
so to
So
speak.
I think what you're trying to say is if your body is used to injury, then it's also kind of used to recovery, if that makes sense.
I
So,
think I think when he meant muscle memory, it's not to do with injury. It's
Yeah,
it's about your muscles performing the same action over and over again.
yeah.
yeah, I think I
Whether,
got that as well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if I stop exercising today and I will lose my muscle over the next month, but if I come back, in Feb and I try exercising
Mhm.
again, I will quickly get my gains back because I have
Mm.
muscle memory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
true.
it's the number one example of muscle memory in today's time is actors, literally. If you think about like method actors, especially, method actors are the ones who really like sink themselves into the role. Like they gain weight, they lose weight depending on the role and what the requirement
Mm.
is, or
Yeah,
their
fair
look.
enough.
So if you see how quick they gain and how quick they lose, that's literally muscle memory at play.
To an extent,
It's
yeah,
true.
I think that's a factor. So, the next question that I had, um, and again, this one really, rings and resonates, and I think anyone experiencing an injury would want to know is what factor or combination of factors got you through the injury? What did you do? What did you say? What did you listen to? Who were you around that got you through that period of time? Or did you do it alone? How how did it work? What did you do?
Well, no man is an island. Um, I don't think it's possible for you to be completely alone or isolated while
Hmm.
when you do this. I had a support system. I had a support system of friends and family who believed in me throughout the process. And it's also the kind of people I looked up to, real life fellow athletes and also athletes, footballers whom I follow who have been through injuries. You watch them and you see them come back and well, in today's day and age their journeys are usually documented, so when you watch that, it kind of instills this sense of faith in you that yes, you can do
Mhm.
it too. And you see them make all these expressions of pain that you would usually not see your favorite athlete making, right? And you're like, they're very much human, they're very much human like you. So Um, yeah. One, friends, family who have believed in me. Thankfully, both my parents have always supported me in football.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's good. And my brother also always supported me, of course. In fact, my older cousin brother, as I said earlier, he's the one who got me into it.
Wow.
My best friends, again, in and out of sports, both the backgrounds, they supported me. And again, watching these people. Media is a beautiful tool.
Mm.
So it also depends on the kind of people you follow online. It plays an impact
Yeah,
on
it's
the
the
kind of
kind of
mindset that
content
you
that you
develop.
consume, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Plus, my physio, oh, beautiful physio. She kept at me. She would not let me quit. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a lot about fortitude, you know? I think what you said earlier about getting a physio that is hands-on, that wants you to push yourself, is very
yeah,
important because there really is no recovery without it. You have to tell your brain that you want to recover. Otherwise,
that's true.
it's not going to put the resources towards recovery. The easiest example is if you just, as you say, you just sit around,
Mm.
as opposed to putting those muscles or your injured parts through strain, then there's little to no incentive for your body and your mind to speed up that recovery, right?
That's absolutely true.
It's very
Absolutely true.
it's very simple principle. If you use something as much as you can, as regularly as you can, that thing, especially if it's a part of your body, if it's a skill, and you can get more abstract than that as well, is going to get better. You move towards improvement if you know, push yourself to the limit. And I guess in sporting terms and in athletic terms, this is known as progressive overload. You have to
Yes,
keep pushing a little bit more every time to keep well, in the case of recovery, I'm not sure what you'd say, but to encourage hypertrophy, your muscles growing, you need to
yeah,
keep loading them progressively.
that's true.
Yeah.
It's in your brain. Basically, when you start off movement, the reason you're awkward at it is because your body is not used to it. Your brain does not know how exactly to direct your body. But the minute you start doing it again and repeating it, a neural pathway is built in your brain. The more it's kind of like, practice makes you perfect. That's actually true because the
Hmm.
neural pathway, the better it gets in your brain, the better you get at the moment. So yeah, and it applies to everything, like you said.
Definitely. It learns, your body learns how to adapt with what you've been given, right? I'm
Exactly.
thinking of two very nice, very beautiful examples actually that come to mind. One of them's a bicycle. So I think
Okay.
there was a TEDx talk about this, where if you configure the axle, the turning axle of your bicycle, such that
Okay.
a right turn turns the wheel left and a left turn turns the wheel right, you're no longer going to be able to ride that bicycle because your
Interesting.
brain is
Mm.
expecting your body, your entire body while cycling is adjusted to that. So the gentleman demonstrated through video of him learning how to ride a reversed bike. Eventually, he did it. Then something beautiful happened. When he tried to ride a normal bike, he couldn't.
That's so
Mm.
interesting.
He couldn't
Interesting. Very interesting.
because he got used to because in his brain, left was right, right was left, right? It's
Mm.
it's it's crazy because it got used to a completely different system. So in a sense, it's really your brain literally learning to walk again. The key
Yeah,
difference here, I have to because it's an analogy, the key difference here is your system is improving gradually. You're returning to normal. Whereas this,
exactly.
you're regressing and adjusting to something new. For example, loss of sight, loss of a limb, loss of this, loss of that. You have to learn to adjust to that, right? And another example that I really like, this one's unconventional, but I experienced this, which is why I say it. So I'm beginning to become something of a headphone maniac, right?
Okay.
Where I'm very much invested in audio and these kind of things. And let me tell you something crazy. Um, a couple years ago, I used to use these Bluetooth earbuds called Soundpeats True Engine 3 SE. I dropped them in the swimming pool. So one of them no longer works, sounds softer than the other, still somehow turn on, but one of them sounds significantly softer than the other. Most likely driver damage, irreparable. I got a refund. Um, Now, here's the crazy part, right? I was used to those, stopped using them, had to get new headphones, used them for a while, didn't like them at all. At all. Even though all the reviews and everything suggested, oh, these are, they're better for this, they're better for that. Used them for a while and became inseparable. I still have those earbuds. I lost the charging case. And I tried my best to find a replacement charging case because they don't make those anymore. Because I love them oh so very much. Here's the thing. So I bought similar ones and I continued down that path. After a while of using the newer ones with a different sound signature, I tried going back to the same family of headphones I used to use, the Soundpeats, and they sounded like garbage to me. Because your brain has adapted itself to a certain sound signature. So
That
when
is
you
true.
introduce when you reintroduce it to a different sound signature, it's like, what is this? But
Yeah.
if you keep on
That is
listening to
true.
that more and more and more, you'll start to appreciate its unique qualities, and eventually you'll start to appreciate it as a whole, right?
That is absolutely
Um,
true.
and more recently than this, I bought my favorite pair of headphones ever. I know this is a big aside, but I promise you there's a point. I bought my favorite pair of headphones I've ever owned. They're called the Etymologic Research ER3 SE. It's a very scientific name because it's a very scientific pair of headphones. Basically, these headphones are considered by many in the audiophile community as a complete outlier because for what I bought them for, they're not supposed to sound this good. there's nothing close to that price range that even begins to compete, right? Because they were designed for critical listening. They were designed to sit literally inside your ears and tell you every detail objectively, right? There are pros and cons to that. This podcast isn't about headphones, right? So when I'm adjusting myself to this new thing, first of all, first time I heard it was a groundbreaking experience. So I cried. I actually teared up because I didn't know you could hear so many things in music. I actually teared up. But then I started to, because that was a wildfire. Then I started to notice the subtle differences. And I really started to notice them. They started bothering me. So I used software to sort of, get rid of those differences through EQ. However, I noticed something recently. I find myself turning off the EQ every time I use them because I've gotten used to their sound signature, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Very
Mhm.
interesting.
it's pretty incredible. So I guess the whole point of this is, the human mind is, I feel like this really connects very beautifully, sports, psychology, audio,
Mhm.
everything. It's one thing I freaking love about this podcast and one of the reasons I started it. Um, and one of the reasons we started it, by the way. I cannot begin to take all the credit. By the way, full disclosure, by the way, just so I can chastise myself a little bit more. This podcast was his idea, not mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all
This
right.
podcast wasn't even my idea. I just executed on it. That's all. So
Interesting.
yeah, 100%. The story is, I'll tell you that later. The story is this little microphone here. It's not a little microphone, it's quite a big microphone. Was gifted to me by one of my high school bullies. Um, think of it as a form of apology. So I reconnected with him after a while, and he told me what had happened in his life ever since I got him expelled from the school. And he said, Ali, at the beginning, you'd ruined my life, man. I felt kind of bad. But then he's like, now I live in an apartment in downtown Toronto. I run my own dropshipping business, and I've never been happier in my life. So thank you. And it
It's
was
funny how things turn out.
groundbreaking. And he's like, what are you up to nowadays? I told him, I'm school, uni, podcast. He's like, podcast, interesting. Tell me more. Because, Amazon dropshipping is a side hustle. So he got very invested in the podcast. So I told him, oh, this. I'm thinking, and I try to sing sometimes, I try to rap sometimes, but I don't have a nice microphone. He's like, I will get you a nice microphone. Pick any mic that you want. I was like, why? He's like, it's the absolute least I could do. So I went through Amazon Canada and I looked and I looked and I looked and I settled on this one and he sent it to me.
Oh my God. It
So,
is
and as
crazy.
soon as I received this man texts me, you have a mic, I have a mic. What are we doing? And I was like, podcast. He's like, excellent idea. And so that's where we are today. But anyway, enough tangents for the time being. Must
Yep.
encapsulate the ADHD.
I
Thing is,
think
right? I
yeah.
have the composure and awareness now to know when I'm going on a tangent, but that doesn't stop me from going on a tangent, right?
I've never
Uh,
been able to crack the formula to stop him from going on a tangent.
no, okay, but
I just
let
let him.
let's
Tangents
funnel
are
back in.
interesting.
Let's funnel back
Okay,
into
Yeah.
all right.
sir.
I think you were talking about like how I'm gonna circle
I'm
back
gonna close my
to
point.
everything.
Okay, I'm gonna close my point,
Okay,
Ali.
Go
Okay,
go go
then
go
take
go
okay.
over,
go go
please.
go go
Okay,
go.
I'm gonna funnel back down to what we were saying. We're talking about the power of the human mind, right? Until and unless you put yourself in a situation, whether it's with technology, whether it's with an injury, whether it's with an unfamiliar situation, where your brain has to adapt, it will not
Mm-hmm.
adapt.
Mhm.
And if you put yourself in a situation where your brain has to adapt, you cannot stop it from adapting,
Yep.
right? A very, very, very good, easy example. Sometimes um, I give this example to my mom, about my little sisters. And I was like, you sometimes you want to, you're a mother, you're worried, you want them to, you want everything that's best for them, you want them to do things a certain way, etc. I was like, leave them in a situation where they have to figure things out, and they will. You
Mm.
want to know why that is? And it's just become very philosophical, but I will close the point here because it's a really good way to get right back into injuries in football. It's because
Okay.
ultimately, and I think you'll understand this better than I because you do read psychology, as you said, sometimes. Ultimately, the human brain was designed to survive. It does not
Yeah.
matter what situation you put which human being in. I promise you, they will find a way to survive. And they'll either die because they ran out of means to survive, but they will never walk or wait for their own death. Never.
That is
Never.
true.
It takes another level of depressed and gaslit and utterly internally disintegrated to let yourself die. You know, there's this very famous, apparently it's an Arabic saying, apparently, right? I have to verify this, but it says, you know, you say you want to die, throw yourself in the ocean, and you'll see yourself fighting to survive. Your body and
Okay.
mind are not designed to
Mm-hmm.
give up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this can go many different places. It can go spiritual, it can go religious, but the idea is, you know, it depends on, I guess, depends on what the viewer believes in. I believe in creation. I do not believe that the human being was created for anything short of perfection and excellence. And the most blaring and glaring evidence of that is the fact that no matter what situation you put a human being in, they'll find a way either out of that situation or a way to adapt to that situation. And I think that is beautiful because if anything, if nothing else, it tells us one thing. And really, I don't care how banal or repeated this is, but genuinely, by design, a human being is capable of doing anything that they set their mind to. It's impossible not to, because that's our design, right? If I wake up tomorrow and I decide, you know what, I want to work on my voice and I want to go from a 7 out of 10 or a 6.5 out of 10 I am right now to an 8 or 9, I am aware of the individuals, the resources, the methods, and the sheer dedication required to actually get myself there, right? Because a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
artists that I follow are self-taught singers who have shared their initial recordings and have said, this is what we used to sound like, this is what we sound like now. It's a very simple example. So I guess, you know, these little sort of snippets into mental resilience and I guess the whole picture I tried to paint, hopefully it's a pretty good picture. But
It is
yeah, I
definitely.
guess so. You know, you said Tanya. I guess you know, just a good way to segue back in. You said mental resilience was a big part of your recovery, and also your main learning. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay. All right. So I have a few comments on your earlier topic.
Sure,
Can
Mm-hmm.
I, delve into both sides
of
and come
Yeah.
course,
back to it? Okay, all right.
of
Yeah.
course.
So, as you rightfully said, survival is something that we are designed for. It is one of our most primal instincts. In fact, humans have two primal instincts: survival and reproduction.
Hmm?
I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
reason that's the reason we've existed for so long,
You're
right?
very
And
much
that's the
connected as
reason
Mm-hmm.
well. Survival
that's the reason
requires
we
reproduction.
fight to survive,
Yeah.
right? However, let me show you the other side of it, right? Like you said, our brain adapts to our environment. However, what's been happening now is that evolution evolution could not keep up with the human progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you by any chance either of you read the book of Hunter Gatherer's Guide to 21st Century? If
What's
not,
Uh,
Guide to a 21st Century?
Hunter Gatherer's Guide to a 21st Century.
No.
No. Okay. So the main point of the book is this, right? Our evolutionary tendencies could not keep up with the human progress, the rate of human progress. I mean, first came the internet, then came, the cell phone, and
mm-hmm.
I don't know the order honestly, but tech kept evolving. So currently, in this point of time, there is this mismatch between our evolutionary tendencies and the modern environment.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so basically, we were initially hunter-gatherers, right?
Yes.
In
Mm-hmm.
the olden times, our,
Yeah.
our, our primitive ancestors, they were all hunter-gatherers. There was a lot of action and there was a lot of physical activity involved in their day-to-day lives.
Mm-hmm.
And But it's only the past century or so that we've been leading sedentary lives. It's
Mm.
because once we started progressing, once we started discovering things, and once we started getting better, our evolutionary tendencies were not able to keep up, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying not to go off on a tangent over here, by the way.
Continue. It's
But
okay.
but what happened was earlier our ancestors, they used to move a lot. But
Mhm.
today, here we are sitting at desk jobs from 9 to 6 every day. And then we
Mhm.
come back home using some mode of transportation. And at home, again, we turn into couch potatoes. So
Yeah.
this is very unnatural for us because
And the
humans were
only way
not
to
meant to be.
counteract that is to go into a big fancy room and lift metal sticks.
Yes.
I've read this somewhere, before. It's the truth. We have to recreate our active environment by literally lifting metal sticks, pulling on cords and whatnot.
I do have a little point to relate to that, but I'll do it after Tanya does. So.
Okay, so that's where exercise comes into picture, right?
Hmm.
It helps you combat that sedentary lifestyle and it makes you move. So basically, so exercise is not to make you move. It's so that you can move better. It's so that
Mhm.
you function better. It's so that you're more capable. It's it's less it's not supposed to be an aesthetic tool like most people use it to be. It's more of a performance tool. It's
Yeah.
supposed to make you more capable, and you should be able to go about life better. And you shouldn't be in your 20s and 30s complaining about your back pain and knee pain. So that's unnatural.
I promise
But
you,
Mm.
you,
when I started, I'm sorry to cut you off, very small
uh
point. Um,
okay.
unless you'd like to continue, by the way, I can make this
No, no,
point
no,
longer.
no. Please go ahead.
But I promise you, it's directly related. When I started viewing exercise as more of a this makes me feel good and feel better, as opposed to
Hmm.
this makes me look better, I cannot tell you the kind of progress I made. At my
Exactly.
Mm.
peak, right now, I am close to. So here's the thing: when you start exercising, working out, it's hard to ever come back to state zero. It's
That's true.
almost impossible
Mm.
to go back to the absolute beginning because your
Yeah.
body will
Yeah.
remember something, at least
Muscle
something,
memory.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Muscle
However,
memory.
what I'll tell you, being close to, when I first started right now, because I really haven't had a diet exercise routine for a very long time, to be perfectly honest. I remember not too long ago, this was less than a year ago, when I was at my peak, or actually just about a year ago when I was at my peak. I remember being able to do things that, young me would have been enthralled at. I remember having the stamina and the resilience to do, an 800, 900 calorie workout in 90 minutes. I had not even envisioned ever being in that kind of form before. And I felt honestly for the first time in a long time, there's many subtopics to this. I felt very much unstoppable, right?
Oh,
Mm.
It's a huge thing. And then,
that was beautiful for you.
unfortunately after that, gaining all that weight back and everything later, it felt like shit. So one day I said, enough is enough. I know what that used to feel like. I'm gonna go back. So I went to my uni coach and I was like, Coach, your wish is my command. That's all I said to him. That's all I said to him. So then I worked with him. I worked out independently. Came back the next semester. My coach looks at me. He said, Ali, your body's changed completely. Said, I don't
Mm.
know what to say, but your body has changed completely. And yeah, it's incredible because as you said, that's why I really had to raise this point, and I had to do it right now, is most people view exercise as a way of, getting in shape and looking better. But I promise you, when you actually feel what exercise has to offer, you won't care about those things anymore. And the
That
beauty
is
of it
absolutely.
is, if you're doing it right, good aesthetic will follow. It will
That's true. It's
very
a
much follow,
perk.
right?
Mm.
Skin will tighten a little bit, your muscles will get stronger, everything will follow in an order of progress. But what you got to focus on is how much better you feel compared to the previous week or the previous month and all those things. I feel like if we focus more on feel and less on looks, it's harder to stop us. Because you
That's
get,
true.
and it's not just, it's just a very common example. You get addicted to that feeling.
You do,
very
you
much.
do.
And of
It's
all the
addictive at a
addictions in
high.
this crazy world, this is one addiction that I will support. So
That
long
is
as it
true.
doesn't, so long as it doesn't go overboard, right?
That's true again. I
But
agree with
yeah,
that
Tanya,
as well.
I had to sort of, like, add a sort of a, you can say, the speech
Layer.
bubble over here. Please continue where you left off. So you were saying exercise has
Uh-huh.
become a tool for improving aesthetic as opposed to improving performance.
Okay, yeah, I was saying that. I do agree with you, by the way. I mean, before, I've always known fitness was important, right? And but I never actually did it. I used to, back in school or during my club days, I would avoid the drills as much as possible. Like everyone, I didn't want to run, I didn't want to do
Yeah.
anything. And my push-ups, I used to do it in my head. My head used to go down and come up. My body would stay where it was. But I got into fitness because of my injuries. And
Mm.
that's the only time I could truly appreciate the value of fitness. I mean, everyone knows fitness is important, but once you're in it, once you feel it, there's no going back. And the feeling of getting the journey to getting my first push up, oh my God. But today, with every push up that I do, I am truly grateful to it. And my first pull up, oh my God, what a high. What a high. Nothing combats that feeling. So, um, yeah, I think Ali Hamid had something to say. He said that
Yeah,
he made you feel that to me.
yeah. So I was kind of circles back. I was sort of thinking about it just then, kind of
Okay.
relating to my own sort of, I wouldn't on and off journey with fitness.
It's a
Okay.
fitness journey, Ali
I've
Hamid. It's a fitness journey nonetheless. It is.
true,
It is. It is.
true. It's like the psychology of it mostly.
Okay.
It's mostly to do with like how Ali was saying, how you change your mindset about fitness, how you change your mindset about exercise. I've had an on and off thing where I do some level of movement, but I wouldn't say it's like as high as going to a place with fancy machines and metal things. Or it could be as simple as like, at home, just moving around, or you're jamming to music and you sort of do a little, dancing or something like that. Just to keep your body moving, because you're sick of sitting down, right? And it's not been more apparent for me since I started working, like the nine to
Interesting.
six.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting nonstop for like the first few months, and I was like, nope, nope, I cannot. I need to keep moving. And I always find myself move just for any reason whatsoever. Whether I have to go to the washroom, whether I have to like, grab something from somewhere or just talk to somebody, I always have to like move. And I was like, that's enough. Even if it's like for a few seconds, it's like you need that movement. And that's the
That's true.
psychology playing a factor, because you've already been sick and tired of sitting 9 to 6 nonstop, or even just stepping out for one thing. You maybe have multiple reasons to do it. You need excuses, but you need to make sure the excuses are the right ones for you to motivate yourself to get out and get up.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
So that's what the psychology plays such a big factor in everything you do, regardless of any facet. Be it, even the podcast, as you said, I did start it, but realistically, he's the one who brought the dream forward. He's the one who executed it. So he had the psychology to do it.
I'm a
I think both of you
campaigner.
done a beautiful
I'm a
job.
campaigner by
Yeah.
nature, right? Someone
Yeah.
starts a campaign, someone wants to take something forward, I make sure it
Hmm.
goes forward, right?
Yeah.
I'm a
Interesting.
big believer, I'm a very big believer in, um I don't know how to say this without talking about it for 6 hours. So I'm gonna try to figure something out in the next few seconds. Okay. I'm a very big believer in, everyone has something to offer this world.
Mhm.
Everyone has something to offer to this world. No one is here without reason. Absolutely nobody. And I know this sounds very banal, and I know, you hear all these things about, oh, find your purpose and this and that. First of all, that's bullshit. You do not
Mm.
find your purpose. You don't
It
just sit
finds you.
around. You don't just sit around. Sometimes that you don't just sit around and, it's like look for a linear track that'll get to your purpose or somehow wait for it to come to you. It's not how it works. It's about
Mm.
exploring, right?
Yeah.
You have to see what it is that plays a certain string in your heart, and then you have to take that thing forward, right? That's what
Mhm.
self-discovery more or less
Yeah.
is about. When people say find your purpose, uh, the knee-jerk reaction is, well, what if I can't? What if I don't know?
Mhm.
Thing is, you won't know because we usually have a very one-track mind. We're like, okay, I have to do this, I have to go this way. I'll probably find my purpose along the way. That's not how it works. You have to put yourself out there and you
Mhm.
have to try and you have to discover and you have to fail. And eventually you're going to end up somewhere you're like, I like being here more than I like being in other places. And then you
Yeah.
develop that, and then you develop maybe some other thing, but you tend to develop something more and more. And I'm really addressing this to a lot of people who are very much like me, who don't have a goal, who don't have a purpose. One of my favorite influencers, his name is Ankur Wariku, and I'm subscribed to his newsletter. I follow him on social media platforms. I even have his book, by the way, his first book. It's very nice. Um, and he says there's no such thing as a goal, right? He says
Mm.
um, build habits and not goals. I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Do
Yeah.
True.
things routinely that'll make you a better person, right? And sure enough, you'll know where you're headed,
Yeah.
right? It's very difficult to set a goal to yourself and then try to construct your path to that goal. That's
Mhm.
like,
Right.
stacking, that's like piling a mountain and then climbing the mountain.
Mhm.
Building habits is more like making yourself more capable of climbing any given mountain that's thrown at you. And I think that's
Yeah.
True.
gorgeous. I think that's
Yeah.
lovely, right?
And on the flip side, and this is just like another thing just to add on. If you're really grinding and you feel like you're not getting the results, it's just a mental block.
Mm.
Psychology is playing a huge factor with you because you're getting out of that comfort zone to probably a zone that's your body or your mind has just been seeing like, oh, what's this? It's unfamiliar. There's unnaturalness to it. It's
That's
how we
true.
were. That's how we were circling back to the first point we said about unnaturalness. The psychology is a huge factor, but it's a factor you can control,
That's true.
and that's the one thing people don't take advantage of enough,
Definitely.
or
I
they
think.
do,
Oh,
but I don't know. It's just like I feel it personally. I haven't seen it much happen either in my life. Maybe I've not noticed enough, or I've not seen it enough. But I do feel like the psychology can be controlled, but how you control it is the biggest point where it really changes for you.
that's true.
Yeah,
I
mental
think.
control and fortitude is key to anything.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I think I understand what you're saying, and it's difficult. It's very difficult because I think you touched upon something about comfort zones. Yeah, as I said, it's good to discuss this flip side as well. As I said, human brains are built to, adapt and survive. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, to the human brain, survival means doing
Jump.
absolutely everything it can
Minimal.
to ensure that you do not exit your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's true.
Absolutely. If it means telling yourself, I think that really translates what you were trying to say, Ali Hamid.
Mm.
Whether it's learning something new, whether it is literally for someone with ADHD, whether it is starting a task, any
Yeah.
task, right? Even if it's something as small as that, right? Your brain does not want to do anything that it
Yeah.
is not comfortable with. You really have to put the effort to make it do that, right?
That's true.
And
Hmm.
this is where again you go back to the thing I said about habits, right?
Mm.
Starting very, very small, building big habits will train your brain to be okay with trying new things and learning new things because your
Yeah.
brain will sooner rather than later, hopefully, realize that stepping out of your comfort zone equates to improvement. And
That's true.
once you've
Mm.
convinced, and it's a very it's a narrow pathway to get here. But that's why you find entrepreneurs just do so many things because they've kind of hacked their brains into knowing and thinking that, oh, trying new things more often than
Yes.
not leads to a lot of success. right? For them at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of failure, a lot of going against what everyone said, a lot of going against their own inner voices to actually get to where they are, right?
Right.
That's true.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when that's the whole, I love this thing, build habits as opposed to setting goals, set habits, setting
Yeah.
goals.
Yeah.
Because, in the strictest sense, once you realize that stepping out of your comfort zone equates to more good than it does bad, then your brain has no reason to stop you. Quite the opposite,
Yeah.
actually. That's how adventurers are born. They want to try new things because they
Mm-hmm.
think, because they genuinely believe it's good, right? But anyway, I don't want to go too far down another rabbit hole. Um,
You were saying, Tanya, you had a point about the psychology thing.
Um, Actually, I was going to say the same thing as Ali Raza.
Yeah.
So our brain, it stores data, right? And it stores data about what makes you, in which environment are you okay with surviving? You're comfortable, right? It stores the data. So
Mm-hmm.
every time you step out of your comfort zone, your brain will send the data to the forefront of your mind and it'll do everything in its power to pull you back.
Yeah.
And I find that very fascinating. And I feel like this is the this is the point where self-awareness comes into play
I was
and all this
literally
knowledge
just
comes
gonna
into
say, I
yeah.
swear. Because at this
Mm.
point in the
Exactly.
episode, I promise you, people are
Uh-huh.
thinking, okay, oh, you just said this and that, and this philosophical and that philosophical, and this about your brain. But Mr. Podcast Sir and Miss Podcast Ma'am, what is the answer? How do you do it?
Exactly.
It lies in
This is it.
self-awareness.
This is where
If you
self-awareness came into play.
exactly, if you sit down with yourself, and I think Tanya, you're going to explain it better than I can, I know. But if you sit down with yourself, just sit down with yourself, and whether it's writing that you like to use, whether it's thinking, whether it's talking, for me, talking works, right? I
Okay.
realize
Mm-hmm.
things about myself after talking to other people about them. That's why I love some of the friends I have. They will not hesitate to stab me in the front, but they will never stab me in the back. Never. And I promise you, if you have a friend who constantly calls you out on bad behavior or this sort of self-protective behavior or anything constantly, that friend is worth keeping. They will
I agree.
almost never ever are they going to cheat on you? Are they going to let you down? You want to know why? Because they've made it a point that they want to see you be the best version of yourself. And I promise you, someone like that is willing to ignore every bad quality of
That's
yours
true.
to make sure that you reach that point. I have friends like this, and sometimes I genuinely think to myself and I cry. It's like, what have I done to deserve such and such person in my life? Such that for whatever strange, unknown reason, they think that me being the best version of myself is the way to go. Like, why do they
That's
care so
true.
much? What literally, what is in it for them? Because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, human beings, as I said, your brain, the way it thinks, are extremely selfish, right? Almost
Yeah.
everything. If you go into I think Freudian psychology, it becomes even
Hmm.
scarier. Even your
Okay.
parents. I'm not
Mm-mm.
sure if it's Freudian or if it's Jungian, one of these two.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
what they've come up with, even your parents have selfish interests in doing some of the things that they do or they don't do, right? As much as
Mm.
loving you, as much as caring for you, etc. But really, for me, the outlier is people wanting you to be the best version of themselves of yourself when there's literally nothing in it for them.
That's true.
Why? Why?
Mm.
Those are genuine
If
things.
you look at it psychologically, there's no reason for you to do that. You are much better off spending your time bettering yourself or spending your time doing things that you enjoy, but you still would rather invest in another person. Why? Why do some people do that? I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it leads to an understanding of what the term love is. Maybe it leads to an understanding of oh, I don't know. Maybe just seeing you do good has somehow, for some reason, for some unexplained reason, created a feedback loop in their brain that makes them feel good. Seeing you do better for yourself makes them feel good somehow. Why?
Mm.
That's for them to decide. That's where I personally cannot come like how we're very linearly able to connect and explain sort of everything that we've been talking about. I have
Yeah.
not come up with a linear explanation for this. Because some people just show up and they immediately want to see you do better. One of my friends at one point was like, I'm willing to sell you my old graphics card for an insanely cheap price. Because I had a certain amount of money saved up. It's like, I'm willing to give you that for such and such amount on one condition. If you use the rest of that money to buy things for yourself, just buy things that are going to make you feel happy. Because I don't really tend to do that. I don't. I'm from a culture where, I feel like you got to do good things to earn things. That's all.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right.
Okay.
And for me, that was, he's like, okay, you have this amount of money left over, other than food, right? Because
Okay.
food is a living expense.
Right.
Other than living expenses, you're gonna spend that money to buy good things for yourself. I don't know why. There's no reason. Why do you care? You know, that's just one of the many examples that I can think of. Anyway, I went on to something different again, unfortunately, and I hope
No, it's
yeah,
very
and I
No,
interesting.
hope that it's easy, by the way, to stick to these trains of thoughts. Because 1 second, I think my mom is calling me. Okay. Oh, I just got the call. Okay. She texted. Just 1 second. All right. Okay, cool. We're good. Um, but yeah, no, I just hope it's easy for the listeners to follow and just,
May
it's
I
sometimes maybe
may
good,
I
sometimes maybe
present
not. Yes, please.
may I present an evolutionary perspective to what you just said?
Yes.
So again, this is not an explanation. There's not some solid explanation for it. But humans, from the very beginning, we've lived in tribes. We've lived
Mm.
in clans. If we did
Mm,
not, there would be no way we would survive because
True.
one man alone or one human alone cannot survive.
Yeah.
There are too many dangers out there. We survive in numbers. We thrive in numbers. So again, that sense of community, that sense of tribe, that sense of community, it has translated into this today. Could be. Again, it's a possibility. But like I said earlier, that our evolutionary tendencies are, they're not the same as they were when, as they were for our primitive ancestors. However, they have translated into different things, right? A very interesting example would be, again, if a man were to try to survive alone, right? If you
Yeah.
and earlier in those times, they would fear the wild, they would fear the animals. Today,
Yeah.
there are no animals or the wilderness to fear, but that fear remains, and that fear has attached on to things like if a man walks into the bar and he sees a pretty woman, he is just going to be he's going to be scared. Like, what if she rejects me? It's
why?
the
Mm.
same sense of it's the same sense of fear. It has just translated into different things now. It has attached onto different things
Mm.
now. However, our primal instincts are very much active and at play even today. And I
Mm.
find that so fascinating. And
I find that
I've
intriguing
just
though. How does the fear of I guess wildlife translate to a fear of
I mean, this fear could be anything, right? This
Yeah.
fear
Good.
could be, yeah, it's not just necessarily that,
yeah.
but any kind of fear,
Just a
right?
Yeah, I agree.
question.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
just a
Because
question
back
to
back
throw.
then,
Um,
it's interesting. Yeah, yes, please ask your question. Sorry.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a question. Do you think, like how you said about how we've lived in tribes and how obviously a lone man can't do anything alone, do you think
Yeah.
that in today's modern world with technology and everything, do you think that reliability has reduced? Is that what you think? Or is it just become, it's changed, reliability has a changed face now. There's a new way of looking at reliability than, say you would rely on about, I don't know, in the old times you would rely about 10 people to hunt. But
Right.
now, is it like, do you rely on a team to create the next big invention, or can you do it alone now with the resources that we have, with the technology advances we made?
Can I
That's a
just say, by the
very
way, I
okay.
really like the way this is going. I really do. Well, please continue.
So,
Hello. So Ali and I were just discussing a madness that happened, and I think
okay.
it's a cute, but it's a much funnier and more different example of adapting. I think it's just cleverness. So
Okay.
you remember how I mentioned, oh, this has no direct relevance to anything we're saying, by the way. It's just funny.
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You remember how I mentioned my friend said, I'll sell you my GPU for really cheap if you promise to use the rest of the money on other things for yourself? I said, yes. So basically, here's what had happened. I have a PC. It's a lovely PC. I'm very grateful to God for it. But um, I was eating at this desk. This desk is very small. Very small. Why? Because just behind me is a queen size bed. So there ain't a lot of room in this room, right? So I was eating at my computer table. That's already a red flag, by the way. Do not eat in front of computers if it can be avoided. I know it's a very sort of grade 3, grade 4 kind of thing that you get taught, and then people just hope you're going to use your brain afterwards. But we're so computer reliant now, it's almost
Yeah,
unavoidable. I have to
that's
admit
true.
it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
true.
So I'm eating here. I've got a glass of Laban, right? You know the white stuff, Laban.
Yeah, of course.
So I
Yeah.
had I knocked it over, and the PC was on my right side at the time. Funny thing. I had recently, only very recently moved it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. Do you know why I did that? So I could see the cool, colorful lights on the inside because one of the side panels is made of glass, right? Had I not done that, I'd be fine. Anyway, Laban falls onto PC. You're like,
Oh
thank
no.
God, onto the PC. No, 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 no. Laban falls into PC.
No.
And how did it fall into
No.
PC?
What?
The top is basically ventilated. It's a mesh. Why is it a
Okay.
mesh? Ventilation. That's all.
Yes.
So
Okay.
thankfully, it's a pretty thick mesh. Actually, I can show it to you. This thing. It's removable, so you can
Yeah.
clean it. Now,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately, a mesh is still a mesh. It has holes in it. So the
Right.
Laban drips in, falls onto my GPU and its
Okay.
electrical connector. I panic and I immediately turn my PC off. I didn't emergency shut down or anything. I properly shut it down. It shuts down pretty quickly.
Okay.
And I unplugged
Okay.
everything immediately.
Okay. Okay.
However, long story short, because of that and potentially a few other, dumbasseries that followed, that GPU was lost. That motherboard was lost, right? At least that port on that motherboard was lost. So basically, that motherboard still works, but that one port, which is responsible for holding your GPU, no longer works properly, which means that I can still use it, but I'd be forced to use the GPU at about 4 times lower speed, about 25% speed, because I don't want to get into computer terms and stuff anyway. So
Right.
GPU gone. So I was like, I need a new GPU right now. My friend was like, okay, what's your budget? I was like, I don't have a budget. And then I was like, So for graduating, I was due to get a graduation present. I had asked at the time for an iPhone 13 in pink. I don't care what people say. It's a gorgeous freaking color. I love that color. I had asked for an iPhone 13 in pink. I was due to receive the iPhone 13 in pink. This is where my adaptive instincts kicked in. I sat down with my dad. My dad is a very reasonable man. I sat down with him. My mom was there, which is a problem. And I started reasoning. And I said, listen, Abba, you're a businessman. He's like, I would like to strike a business deal with you. He said, go on then. It's like, so this iPhone that I'm supposed to get, it's
Mhm.
worth 3,299 dirhams. And he said, absolutely. However, I do not need an iPhone. I barely need a phone. So here's what we're going to do. I'm instead going to get a Samsung Galaxy A52s for less than half the cost.
Okay.
Then I understand that we're not trading in equal assets here because cash in hand has a value that goes
That's true.
beyond just the cost of an item.
Yeah.
So instead of getting this, I told him I'll settle for this phone and 1,000 dirhams cash in hand. He agreed.
Oh.
So I got 1,000 dirhams cash in hand, and I used that 1,000 dirhams to buy a new GPU
You
on the
play your cards well.
on the premise that I would use the remaining 400 to buy something else for myself. You'll never guess what I used the remaining 400 on. A new motherboard. So yeah, the medical bills for my PC, which were my own fault, were about 1,000 dirhams. But flip side is it's a much better GPU. So yeah, lovely. Anyway, this is telling him That little story. And yeah.
Interesting.
Did I learn my lesson? Yes. Do I still eat at the table? More
Yes.
carefully. More carefully. No, it's
Okay.
extremely infrequent. Now, the reason I brought it up is because Ali was like, "Oh, can I go get my dinner from downstairs?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Actually, I'm gonna eat later because I don't want to ruin like the vibe." So
Ah,
it's like cool. And I was like, "Oh, this reminds me." You know those old people, really old people. Oh, this reminds me of a story that happened
okay.
this one
and
time.
and
Anyway,
that's why I don't have a PC.
uh, yeah, this man has a gaming laptop. He's very smart, very smart. Good decision, honestly. So getting a PC is a little bit cheaper marginally. Uh, and performance wise, it's overkill though. It's overkill. Like for what I'm going to be using it for in the next 10 years to come, I don't think I'm going to need to upgrade at any point. Okay. What a laptop gets you though, the especially the kind he's got, is power and portability. That's smart.
Portability.
That is smart. That is very, very smart. Um, in any
Okay,
case, coming
coming
back
back.
to where you were, Tanya, I'm just gonna let you continue now, and I will not interrupt
Okay.
until I absolutely have to.
Okay.
So just to bring everything back,
Yes,
we were talking
Uh-huh.
about,
recontextualize because I forgot.
yeah, we were
You asked the
talking about,
question. Yeah.
yeah, my question was
Yeah.
reliability in today's time. Has it reduced compared to previous regimes?
You mean like
Okay.
human reliability or something else?
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
Human reliability.
You
So
could say
I'm
evolutionary reliability.
yeah. So I'm going to say yes to that. I mean, earlier, you had huge joint families, but
Hmm.
ever since, people started migrating and families become smaller and smaller, today you've got nuclear families. So that has come at its own costs, honestly. Because, okay, examples. I'm going to go with examples to explain this, right? Earlier, when when a kid came in, when a baby came into the family, you had the entire family to take care of it. That's where the saying came from, right? It takes a village to raise a kid. However, in today's times, okay, the mom or and the dad probably and the nanny too, they're taking care of the kid, but it's much harder. The stress is
Mm.
much higher, especially in today's times when most households, especially in the low income and the middle income households, you
Both the
need two
parents work.
breadwinners. Yeah, you need two
Mm.
breadwinners. It's not possible like in the olden times for it to be a single income household, right? So they're working and they're taking care of the kids and they don't have extra help because extra help also costs money, right? So you have to like be really judicious with your money, right? So the stress is much higher the more we move away from each other. Also, something else that I feel is super important is the human touch. The human touch is so important for your nervous system. I mean, example again, a crying baby. A mother picks up the crying baby. It will immediately soothe the baby, right?
Hmm.
And that human touch that you require, and I'm not talking about like random human touch, right? But that human touch that you require from your loved ones. Of course, a mother picking up a kid and a stranger picking up the kid, even though it's a baby, like a newborn baby, it still knows the difference.
Yeah.
And that is so intriguing. Like the way the
Mm.
human mind works, it's so fascinating. But that human touch is necessary. And technology, it is, I mean, we have so many more resources to rely upon today, definitely, but it's
Mm.
pushing us apart from each other, especially
Yeah.
with the new, especially with, I don't know where I heard this, was it Mark Zuckerberg speaking about it to Joe Rogan?
Good
Something
old
about,
Zuck.
something about holograms coming into, I mean,
Mm.
holograms have always been there, but like
Yeah.
now instead of me wasting a friend's party, I can just, my hologram can be over there and we could
You
play
mean
games.
you mean
Yeah.
you mean the metaverse?
Yeah,
You're
of course.
referring
The
to
Yeah,
the
the
metaverse.
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 Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah. That's what they're moving towards.
but that presence, that it's
Mm.
moving that human presence, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know what the consequences of that will be, but I know that it's putting more and more stress on our minds,
It is.
and I have a feeling it's not going to be positive. The consequence,
It is.
not. I mean,
Mm.
let's see.
As
Yeah.
sci-fi as we're getting, Tanya, This this is gonna throw you off. Um,
Okay.
so from what I've read actually, and
Okay.
oh no, oh, there's so many directions I could go right now.
Yeah, I get it.
Neurons are
I see
firing in every
Control,
possible
control,
direction. I
that.
will,
control,
control,
Uday,
control, Uday.
control.
Yeah, no. Yeah, this is gonna throw you off.
Okay.
We read in sci-fi
Okay.
that, yeah, I'm gonna start with the relation and then go to the example, as opposed to
Yeah,
Okay.
starting with the example then coming down to the
yeah,
relation, right?
yeah.
Inductive versus deductive. Please make note of the following theory or observation.
Okay.
Human beings are moving towards their minds being uploaded to computers.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy idea,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Insane idea. I
Mm-hmm.
like to look at it a little bit differently. Okay.
Okay.
Tanya, believe you me, if not in this decade, if not in the next century, if not in the next 3 centuries, we'll get there. It's the insane amount of accuracy with which we are now able to model the human brain and
Mm-hmm.
model thinking patterns and functional patterns and these kind of things. Now, I can only imagine what we'd be doing 100 years from now. Like sentient AI will probably come much before this happens, but we're moving towards it, you know? The
yeah,
only thing is, right, and you read about this in many fantasy books, etc. There's two things that you cannot quite find. What are they? The conscience and the
mm,
soul.
Uh-huh.
You cannot
Yes.
yeah.
find the soul. You
Yep.
don't
Right.
know where the soul is located inside your body. If
That's
you look at
true.
Abrahamic scriptures, you will say that, your soul will leave your body. If you look at yogic scriptures, you will see concepts of, having out of body experiences, but you cannot find the soul. I don't think, at least now, we're ever going to be able to quantify or model the soul, right? But we're
That's true.
certainly trying our best to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just staying true to exactly where I started this sort of branch from. Okay. Um, we're talking about, as I said, increasing mental stress, moving towards the metaverse, moving towards these different ideas. So really, what I'm trying to exemplify from what I've noticed, and I swear to God, by the way, these are just humble observations. I have no qualms against an evolutionary biologist or a physicist or a data science, not a data scientist, sorry. Those are filthy SBA majors. I don't like them. Actually, I'm not supposed. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. SBA majors are not filthy. They deserve love, to be treated with love and respect. You're not going to understand it. This is pure engineer speak, by the way. We get
Okay.
salty about almost every other major. This is a characteristic. In reality, we love them. We very much love them. We love our business friends because we know, eventually when we can't find jobs and they have jobs, they'll probably hire us
Yeah.
in their company, right?
True.
Yep,
Uh,
yep.
and
Okay,
other
coming back.
exam and other things that SBA majors tell themselves to sleep better at night. See how I did a full 360 there? Anyway, getting back to the point. I know, guys. I know I'm hilarious. This is exactly why I have no friends. All right. And so, getting back to this idea that you said, we're putting an increasing amount of mental strain on ourselves. But remember how we started talking about, your mind and body adapting? And you'll read a lot of science fiction about this. Science fiction is truly fascinating, especially when it employs
Mm,
actual biological, evolutionary, and physical principles to reach a conclusion. Because I always find that incredibly fascinating. We're
yeah,
moving towards a model where our bodies will become next to useless. We're talking about some theorists suggesting that human beings may lose the ability to stand up.
Wow.
Eventually,
Okay.
way down the line, we're talking. I don't think we're gonna last this long, but we're talking millennia down the line.
Uh-huh.
If our bodies realize that we're better equipped to just sitting around and barely moving around, we could
mm,
lose the ability, in effect, to stand up and walk around because apparently our brains have determined that is no longer an essential human function. Is that ever going to happen? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think
Mhm.
that initial hunter-gatherer thing is always going to be there. We won't lose the
Okay.
ability to walk. What can happen, however, is our muscles adapting to being less equipped to walking fast
Mm.
and running fast and fighting and all these things. The base level of human growth and development being more focused on mental fortitude than physical fortitude. This I
Sure.
find easier to digest, right?
This could
It's
happen.
we do this we do this thing called we have this thing called in I think in differential equations where we have something called boundary value problems, where basically we try to solve an equation by looking at the solutions as you tend towards infinity from one side and as you tend towards infinity from another side. I really like this concept of infinity, by the way, but I'll tell you why I brought it up really quickly. And apologies to any mathematicians if I've completely butchered it. I promise you have the right idea in my head. But essentially, the idea is it helps to look at and think about extremes to understand where we're going, right? It helps to extrapolate to sort of map out a kind of path. And it's understood that maybe you'll never reach that particular extreme, but you can at least see where we're tending to. So I think that, honestly, we're tending more towards our minds being involved and requiring to be capable of doing multiple things at the same time, engaging digitally, and God knows how many different things that we do in the 21st century, as opposed to, fruit on tree, go get fruit on tree, kill animal, eat, right?
That's
I
true.
swear, no,
Mm.
that's what we grow into. We can't deny that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
that's
our
true.
natural instinct, right? If I get
Mhm.
Mm.
hungry, I'm going to break a piece of glass, and I'm standing in a jungle.
Yeah.
I'm going to break a piece of bark.
Yeah.
I'm going to carve that into a sharp blade, and I'm going to hunt and eat because that's what
Okay.
I know to do in that situation. That's going to happen. I don't think we're ever going to lose that. But I feel like, and I really want to hear what your thoughts are on this, Tanya. We're moving towards being less body dependent and more mind dependent. First of all, how much of what I just said, in your opinion, is bullshit? Secondly, what is your take on this particular idea?
Okay, so I think when people, so what human history has shown, right? And there aren't like proper accounts of it, but what a lot of people theorize is this, that we live in cycles. Humans live in cycles, right? In the past, there have been times when we reached the peak of technology. There was technology before that does not exist today. Okay, that's why there are such amazing engineering feats that we have no idea how humans were able to come up with, e.g., the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a cycle, and that's what a lot of people theorize as well.
Yeah.
So going back to Ali Raza's point, I feel like again we're in a cycle. We will reach a peak of technology,
Yeah.
unthinkable peak of technology, and then there's going to be a fall.
Yeah.
There's going to be a steep fall, and we're going to go back right to our roots, the hunter-gatherer, or not exactly the hunter-gatherer way. It's not going to be square one, but we are going to
Hmm.
take a massive fall.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a theory that I think is plausible. But secondly, I also think that when we say that our reliance on our bodies is going to go down, I feel
Hmm.
like we are only taking into factor as humans,
Yeah,
right?
as humans, and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
assuming infinite development, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are not taking into factor a lot of other things for which our body is very much required. Movement is required. Physical
Hmm.
labor is required. I mean, no infrastructure around you would be possible without, human labor.
Yeah.
Human labor is required for everything. Our
Yeah.
bodies will never be, even to develop tech, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a body is essential. So I don't think it's ever going to be, completely out of use
Yeah. Yeah.
or completely not needed. But I feel like, yeah, I don't see it going that way, and I cannot even begin to fathom what he's presented to me. But yeah, that's going to take a lot of time for me to process. I'm going to be honest.
Mm.
Yeah.
What do you think is sort of the right like mindset or like right psychology to follow for someone
Okay.
who I wouldn't, specifically go one way, but it's like a more general like method that people can follow for life
I have
if
an
they're going
answer
to
for
be.
you.
I do. I know. Uh,
And for
my
once, this answer would take less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
But continue your
Fortunately.
question first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing is, what is it like? What do you think people need to do better psychologically in order to get themselves out of that?
I'm gonna I'm gonna take a shot at this because I would rather not cut Tanya off. Because I have to say, Tanya, you're an incredibly intelligent individual.
Oh,
Incredibly intelligent.
thank you.
Incredibly.
God.
And I think, as someone who has athleticism and maybe football at the front, intellect can very easily be overlooked. And I hope no one ever, ever overlooks that for you. Because you are, for lack of a better word, a profound thinker who is very self-aware.
I said this to Ali when he first pitched the episode that so we obviously do cycling now. We have three hosts and we do cycling. Uh, when he pitched this episode to me, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely in." For some reason or the other, I had just this feeling this I needed to be in this one, and I'm glad I am.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you people invited me on here.
It's
Honestly.
our pleasure. It's
Yeah,
honestly our
pleasure.
pleasure. And yeah,
To answer the
so
question,
to answer the question, and I said 30 seconds, I'll stick to 30 seconds.
Okay.
The answer is self-awareness. Okay? Self-awareness, simplest form, by the way, is understanding who you are and what you're capable of, but not in the abstract, preachy sense that some speakers will tell you or some motivational speakers will tell you. No, self-awareness is sitting down and being brutally freaking honest with yourself about who you are, about what you like, about what you dislike, about how you think, about why you think, about what it is that makes you you. Understanding all your pros, understanding your cons. Once you understand what your pros and cons as a human being are, I promise you, if you actually gain an understanding of what your pros and cons as a human being are, and that's it, I swear to God, that's it. And I mean, really understand it beyond, as in, go beyond the level of, making excuses for yourself and go beyond the level of denying something about yourself when you know it's true. If you can reach that level of honesty with yourself, what you unlock is the ability to work on each of those individual things, is to use your strengths to do things, is to augment your weaknesses or hide your weaknesses or whatever it is, sometimes using your strength in an auxiliary fashion with other people, which is what I try to do, who might have different strengths that cover your weaknesses in moving towards a collective goal. If you sit down and are honest with yourself about what you like, about what you dislike, about who you are, and I've already explained what I mean by who you are, right? I'm not talking about some banal nonsense that any number of motivational speakers could give you. I promise you. You're just honest with yourself and you're like, okay, I have this bad habit, 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 I have this good habit, and I have this good habit, and I have this good habit. Which is
yeah,
why I brought that planet, remember? Build habits, work on habits,
yeah,
not goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you understand it, it is now entirely up to you as an individual who has an understanding of who they are and what they're capable of, what you want to do tomorrow, the day after, with your life, with your children, with your wife, with your whatever. It's entirely up to you now. Why is it entirely up to you? I'm not saying all the circumstances are in your control. No, they're never going to be in your control. But you understand yourself so damn well at this point by simply being honest with yourself that it doesn't matter what external factors throw at you. You already know where you want to be. You have an idea, right? Something of an idea that I want to do this. Because you already know what you're good at, what you're not good at, in very plain terms. I wish I could be more profound, I'm running out of words, right? In very plain terms, because you're honest with yourself, because you understand yourself, because you're aware. You're aware of how you'd react to a certain situation. You're aware of what to control, what to increase, what to decrease, right? Because you have an understanding of yourself as an individual and as a system. You're never going to be perfect, but you're so far ahead of the competition who have not even begun to acknowledge what their weaknesses are because their brain tries to make excuses on their behalf, going back to many of the things that we discussed. And it will. You have to shut it up. You have to sit down and you have to say, okay, I have to do this, but before I can do this and do that, and I have to tell myself this, I'm sorry. Before I can influence other people, before I can see the good in other people, before I can encourage other people, before I can make a podcast that aims to inspire many people by sharing other people's stories or whatever the hell I want to do, I have to be honest with myself. Because on a plane, it's a very easy example. You have to oxygenate yourself first before you can help other people. And you cannot oxygenate yourself if you don't know how the hell to put the mask on. That's it. Okay. So for me, the answer in 30 seconds is self-awareness. Be honest with yourself. In more than 30 seconds is what I've just said. Yeah. You be absolutely honest with yourself about what you're good at, what you're not good at. Come to terms with it and then decide. Do I want to cry about my weaknesses? Do I want to make excuses for my weaknesses? Do I want to fix those weaknesses? Or do I want to maybe ignore those weaknesses and focus purely on my strengths to drive me where I am? It is entirely your decision. But it's not going to be your decision until you get to that level, right?
Yeah.
That's it. So advice on psychology and improvement. For me, this is the one point, right? Sit down, be honest with yourself. As people like to say, discover yourself. Now, discovering yourself does not take, trips abroad and God knows what people get up to. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with that because that comes under exploration. But before exploration comes discovering yourself.
Discovery.
How do you discover yourself? For me, as I said, what helps me is to have a friend to talk to, for them to give me advice, for them to be honest with you. Say, look, this is your weakness, and this is how you're going to fix it. Maybe they'll tell you, maybe you'll figure it out. For other people, it's just sitting the fuck down and maybe just thinking and crying about it, right? But I promise you, you'll get there. And when you get there, the clarity that ensues afterwards is something else, right? Just to close on this particular point, and I guess make it more tempting for other people. Imagine becoming unchallengeable. Imagine becoming, someone who other people's words and actions cannot affect because you're so aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it and how you'd normally react. It's an entirely null and void point. Imagine reaching that level of clarity. It sounds good, doesn't it? Anyway, Tanya, how would you answer this question?
I think I agree with you completely in what you said. I think self-awareness is the most important tool that one can have. I feel like you need to be able to get uncomfortable with yourself. And what I mean to say by that is, in different situations, say you're out for a run, or you're out on a long drive, or whatever may be the situation. What most people do is, they listen to music or whatever. It keeps your mind distracted, right?
Yeah.
Just try not to. Try not to. Most people avoid thoughts.
Being
Okay,
alone
they
with
don't
your
even
thoughts.
realize it.
Yeah.
Most people avoid being alone with themselves. And that is really sad. How are you going to get to know yourself if you cannot be alone with yourself, right? So I would definitely tell people to be able to spend time with themselves. Like if you're going out for a run, if you're driving, you're walking down, don't put those earphones in. Just like spend time with yourself. It's going to be so uncomfortable. In the beginning, it's so uncomfortable spending time with yourself, right? With your own thoughts, like not doing anything at all. But it can lead to growth, is what I feel. And one of my favorite quotes is, change is the only constant in the universe, and we humans are so resilient to change. But I think the quote is so beautiful because you need to change. You need to change to survive. You need to change to thrive. And I feel like that's where self-awareness comes in as well. So if you can't spend time with your own mind, okay, your mind will not make you crazy. Be comfortable with it. And I think that leads to self-awareness. I also think that another very important thing for us humans is that we should step out of echo chambers. So what we tend to do is, you know, we have like a certain set of people that we listen to. Why? Because our views match. We have a certain, set of people we follow on Instagram because they post things that we like.
Yeah.
However, we need to like step out of our echo chambers. We need to be okay with people challenging us, with people challenging our views, right? It would be, I think it's very arrogant of us to think that, yeah, this is it. I know I am right. No, my opinion is it. No, you need to step out. You need to be challenged. That stress is what makes your mind grow. And you need to be able to be your own devil's advocate. And I think,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's also a very important point that
It
really
absolutely
leads
is.
to
It
growth.
absolutely is.
It
That's
absolutely is.
And the last thing that I think is knowledge is power.
Hmm?
I
Mm.
truly believe that. That's one of my mottos. Knowledge is power, and people just gain knowledge and increase your um, linguistic capacity. I feel like these two together, they really deepen your thoughts. They can deepen your thought processes, like all your beliefs that you have. Question them, like what is the thought process behind that belief? Why does this belief exist in my mind,
Hmm?
right? So you
Mm.
should be aware of the thought process that goes behind each thing, behind each belief. Am I following this just because XYZ is following this? Am I um, following this because everyone around me is following it? Why is
Mm.
everyone around me following it? Is it a crowd effect, right? So I feel like we should be questioning our thought processes and we should be okay with being uncomfortable with ourselves. And I think self-awareness is a very powerful tool.
I think that's the
Yeah,
way.
well,
I think that's the way. And I guess I'm so glad that you brought up your second point, and I'm so glad that you brought up your third point as well. Just a moment, just a moment. I think my mom's calling me. Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm really glad that you brought up the second point and third point, because I have to be honest with myself. My rise as a human being in my formative years. So I guess the first thing I gotta mention is a lot of us, sort of went in and around that point, but never actually put a name to it. So a lot of
mm.
what I was referring to, about being honest with yourself, and then you said about being uncomfortable with yourself, that is, I think, what is known as an ego death, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
You are completely prepared to accept and like a genuine assassination of your own ego, right? Where you acknowledge every single bad thing and then also every single good thing, and then you
Mhm.
reconstruct from there. That ego
Oh,
death,
that's beautiful.
that
Mm.
ego death is truly one of, if not the most revolutionary things that a human being can experience, right?
Mhm.
That's true.
Um, I guess it's a really good uh um yeah, I don't know, I'm a little bit emotional about this because I had to experience it. Ali, you had to experience it, and I know exactly when you experienced it. I know exactly when I experienced it. I'm very aware of exactly when I experienced it.
Yeah.
It's a life-changing thing. It was one of the hardest times of my life. I was depressed. I cried a lot. It was one of the most difficult times of my life, but it was all part and parcel. It had to happen. And I look
Mm.
back at that moment now and I was like, thank God it happened, because if it hadn't, I would be a completely different person today. Ali Hamid, you know what I was like. Don't
Yeah.
don't lie, people. Up until 10th grade, you know exactly what I was like.
Mhm.
Can you
We
even
haven't known
begin?
each other.
Can you even
Yeah.
begin to compare 10th grade me to me right now? except for certain key similarities, like the ADHD, you know, the stubbornness, the you can say the impulsivity. Other than that, in terms of the way we grow and interact and learn and live, can you even begin to compare those two things? No.
No.
I know it's part of growing up. I know your brain develops and other things, but people have to acknowledge. I know some people
Yeah.
who live spoiled and die spoiled and don't change at all, at one bit, right? Why am I using that example? I know people who are, I'm sorry for not using a more friendly word, but I know people who are assholes from their formative years up until their deathbed because they never experienced that ego death. I promise you, we as human beings, especially from an evolutionary perspective, we grew up to interact with, acknowledge, love each other, and build circles with each other, whether it's professional circles, whether it's family circles, whether it's partnerships with animals. God damn it, that's where dogs came from. Dogs are domesticated. Dogs are domesticated wolf. That's where man's best friend
Yeah.
came from, right? You know, someone has a theory. I'm sure it's an oversimplification that, you know, some tribesmen were hunting and sitting and they built a fire and the wolf was really cold. So it came and it sat down alongside that fire. Then when man ate a little bit of the meat he'd prepared, he gave a little bit to the dog. And so to the wolf. And so the wolf went back and brought its pack. And then they became a family. And that's where dogs came from, you know? I think it's definitely an oversimplification, but it's beautiful, right? Anyway, just to stay true to the actual point I was trying to make is this concept of an ego death. Ladies and gentlemen, explore the idea, learn what it is, understand what it is, and ask yourselves, have you experienced it or are you yet to experience it? Because it's one or the other. It's one or the other, right? For me, my ego death point was when I hit 10th grade and I went from 10th grade to 11th grade, and I realized that the one thing that I prided myself in, which was my absolute and unchallengeable academic excellence that no one could compete with, had fallen to shit because of bad schooling in grade 10, because of any external factor, because of my ADHD, which I discovered later on in life, because of many things. But when I realized that the one pillar I'd been using to give myself the God complex that I grew up with, you know I had a God complex, honey. You know it. Don't deny it. I did. And I know how it affected people around me, and I hate myself for it. I was going through some of my texts, literally, even it's so iterative, the growth. From uni, I was going through some of my texts that I sent back in high school, and I was crying. And I was crying because I was looking at the way I spoke to some people. What an asshole I was, the way it was. And I couldn't imagine me ever speaking in the same tone to the same people or anyone else ever again. And I cried and I cried. I couldn't sleep that night. And then after that, around morning prayer, I texted individuals and I apologized to them for my behavior years ago. And all of them appreciated it. And all of them were like, it's fine, man. You were different. You're different now. You're different. And I'm so glad that I'm different, right? And all of that happened because, you know, something in my life, no matter what those external factors were, completely destroyed my ego.
Yeah.
And I had no choice but to succumb to that depression and just cocoon myself and just completely lose what makes me me, or, you know, to get back up again. And I'm so glad I decided to get back up again because it took a lot of world building, like in Minecraft, to actually, you know, get to where I needed to get. And I feel like even though there's a lot more to do, that I'm at least a better person than I was back then. And all of that could not have happened if I'd gone on the same tangent of just having like stellar grades throughout and just using that as a ticket or a token to elevate myself above other people. Now, a lot of people don't understand this, by the way, right? They think like, Ali, you have such nice parents, you have such a nice household, such a nice upbringing. So where did this come from? Why are you an asshole? And I thought about this 3 days ago, not more, not less. Back in middle school, all the way from fourth grade onwards, actually, fourth grade to at least eighth grade, and even ninth grade, actually, I was very heavily bullied, like very heavily. bullied for being fat, for being Indian in a 90% Emirati school, for being this, for being that. And of course, it took a toll on me. It took a toll on anyone. I was a very sensitive guy. I really was, and I still am a very sensitive guy. I'll admit it, right? But then something happened. Don't worry, I'm not going to say something inside of me. No, something happened, and what happened was, I'm sorry. What happened was, uh, these same kids that would bully me in school hours started calling me on my telephone, asking me for homework help. And I was like, hang on a minute. I was happy to, by the way. I loved learning. I loved solving math problems. I love solving worksheets, bro. Like if I saw a blank space, I would not be happy until that blank space was filled. That one single primitive motivation took me to amazing heights. And it also had to do with my granddad, my upbringing. Different story, different day. I could make an entire episode just about my ego death, honestly. And I think I will. And I think I will. If you do it, I'll do it. And I think I will, right? But I was like, hang on a minute. Something's not right. Something is not right. Why are these people who ostracized me in school now coming to me as if I'm their savior? And then something clicked. You know, the beginnings of something disgusting, for lack of a better word, started to form. I started to see myself as superior to these people because I thought I was more intelligent than them. And the numbers on the report cards certainly seemed to suggest the same thing. The encouragement and the appreciation that I got from my family for getting good grades, the pushes and the encouragement I got from higher management at the school certainly started to show that. And I think you're seeing a pattern here, right? I became an egotistical idiot who's still a nice guy for all intents and purposes, but the ego was the center. My ego was the center of my existence at the time. I can't lie to myself. This is what I'm telling you guys. Be honest with yourselves. I can't lie to myself about who I was because I can't move forward if I don't acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So that ego became the center of my existence. That experience became who I was for a very, very, very long time. And so then I even remember saying things like, when I got in trouble once in eighth grade, a lot of different things came into play, sort of in eighth grade, as I said, the human being will still adapt. Yes, these people bullied me, but I've been around for so long, they had no choice but to start liking me, and I had no choice but to start liking them. You can't beat him, join him. So, I was smart still, but I was also, I grew into the same crowd. I acquired a lot of the same toxic behaviors. So I started getting into, not as much, but I certainly started getting into trouble. So this one time, my supervisor, who really loved me, he was very fatherly towards me. He was like, Ali, what's gotten into you? What has gotten into you? What's wrong with you? You were never like this. He straight up said it to my face. He literally said in the beginning of eighth grade, he was like, I have given you prefecthood again. And he said, I hope I won't regret it. It's very painful words to hear. Very painful words to hear for me. Said, I hope I won't regret it. And I remember in one of those conversations replying, that, these people get me into trouble with them and they're this and they're that and they're not even worth the dust underneath my feet. God knows where I even learned fucking language like that, by the way. God knows. I used to read a lot of books, maybe that's why. But yeah, it was like, Ali, be careful. And then I was quiet and I was just there in detention for a while. And then Mr. Stephen was his name, God bless him, honestly. He came to me and he said, Ali, if you want these people to, as you said, to not even be worth the ground underneath your feet, and you want to think like this, if you really want to, what he was trying to say is, before you use these big words, before you say these kind of things, improve yourself And he started pointing out the little things to me. Get organized. That was he literally had a poster outside the office saying, get organized. So get organized. Start doing this. Do this better. Do that better. If you really want to be better than these people, then be a better person. That was the whole purpose of him telling me what he told me, right? And so I left that school with these exact words ingrained in my mind. And this is where it started to go downhill. Ninth grade was a big jump for me because I was used to working in a watered down curriculum, for lack of a better word, because other people's genuinely, grades wise, were not that great, or whatever the reason might be. But essentially, it was not a watered down curriculum, actually. That problem happened later. It was a different system. So my teachers and supervisors unanimously agreed. And they called and contacted my parents. And they said to them, he deserves to go to a better school than this one. You need to put him somewhere where he will be challenged because he's too comfortable. And it's a fact. I don't remember for the last for those 5 years in the school, except maybe once or twice, I don't remember seeing a single mark below 90 on my report card, even once. Right? I would get hundreds in mathematics, which other people hate. Honestly, where my parents would have to ask the people, and I'm not trying to brag, I'm trying to create a point because I'm not that anymore. I am not me anymore. You know, I'm gonna cry honestly because now I'm thinking about Mark One lyrics and how this shit relates to that. I'll tell you about Mark One lit off camera, by the way. But really, the thing is, right? I'm not me anymore. I'm a different me now, and I guess the reason it's so significant is because, you know, well, I went into ninth grade. It was definitely more challenging, and I just couldn't cope. It was just different. Everything was different. I went into the IB. If you've heard of the IB, it's a
Oh
completely
my
different system.
God.
They do
Yeah.
have a middle school system, by the way, and a primary school system. But I'd been doing a completely I couldn't cope. You know, it was like design your own experiments, do this, do that. And to find my parents were also like, they didn't make us design experiments in ninth grade. What are these people thinking? These kids aren't meant to do this kind of stuff. But that was the curriculum. It was move, learn, die. You were given an objective and you had to figure out on your own what to do. I wasn't used to that. I was used to having a textbook tell me everything. No, but now I had to rely on the internet. I had to rely on this, I rely on that. I had to figure out the answers. It was not easy. And it was soul crushing. I was depressed for a very long time. But then I got the hang of it at the end, right? I couldn't forget that, you know, I must I was driven, and you know, I wish it would come back because I'm a better person, but I want that one thing to come back. I was driven by the desire to be the best. So I learned and I learned and I adapted and I learned and I stayed up late at night working on assignments and I figured it out and I think I cracked the code, right? Because I did pretty well in ninth grade. However, unfortunately, this came back, so did the other things. I got complacent. And that whole year and thou attitude slowly started to come back. 10th grade wasn't the best. 11th and 12th grade were a nightmare. I couldn't cope. I simply could not cope. You know, I don't want to share trauma, but 11th and 12th grade IB final exams, I barely felt human. I don't want to go into the details of what that entails and just the kind of torture that I experienced internally and, you know, self-inflicted externally, but I was not I didn't feel human. It did not feel human because all of that I built up, that entire castle, turned out to be a glass castle because it all came down when I realized that, oh, actually, I got so comfortable that I lost the ability to grow and to improve. And all of it just came crashing down. So it all comes full circle back to exactly where we started. It was that complacency, that refusal to acknowledge my flaws, that refusal to, and that self-imposed ignorance, that even refused to acknowledge my desire to be the best just because I was comfortable. That comfort that complacency, that overconfidence ended up being the death of me. And this is where I experienced what I describe as that ego death. And it was life-changing. It was life-changing. I had to build everything from scratch. And I'm so glad. I've been thinking about him all day, but I'm so glad I had my best friend Raghav. I had this stupid bitch over here. And I had these wonderful people who were there for me, because if they weren't, I don't know what would have happened. He said, when you mentioned, by the way, the importance of, consistent and constant human touch, I immediately thought about Raghav, because not a day went by where I didn't hug him. Not a day went by. And often I would just stand there and I'd hug him for a minute, and he wouldn't mind. He liked it. He appreciated it. I was that close. I was that dependent. And, it just, yeah. So yeah. I hope that my little story and our wonderful answers not only answer your question, but also provide context to everyone listening as to what it means to improve psychologically. It
All I'm
means to
saying
let your
is,
ego die. That's all.
all I'm saying is, I don't think you have 17 years of friendship without going through everything.
Yeah.
And 17 years is me and Ali's friendship.
Yeah.
17, 18
17.
years.
Wow, that's long.
Yeah.
It's long.
Yeah, that ego death.
Beautiful.
Good God.
This
That
guy,
was
to this day, this guy can advise me, and I will listen to his advice when no one else can advise me, and I would not listen to anyone else. Because I guess it's his understanding of exactly how I think and function
That's true.
that allows him to formulate advice that I have no reason to disagree with, right? It's crazy. But yeah, I guess, two answers to your questions. Look into yourself.
Yeah.
See if you've experienced an ego death or multiple. If you haven't, be prepared to experience it as you go down to it. And also try to get some bad motherfuckers in your life, like Ali Hamid, I remember, I'm sorry, I'm going completely unplugged. I'll decide whether to censor it later or not. But I remembered this one quote from, I don't know who it was, but it sounded pretty badass because he was saying it. And he was like, taking over the world doesn't take money, power. It takes heart and 3 bad motherfuckers on a mission. That's what it is. Honestly. And I think that really sums up us as a human race. And I guess what I consider to now, at least in vague terms, be my purpose in life is to understand the value in those connections, in learning from everyone else, in refusing to give up on any individual and forcing them even sometimes to see what they're capable of. And I mean that in a soft way, of course, but forcing them to see that, look, you're not what everyone chalks you up to be. You have so many good things about yourself, and you're going to acknowledge those, and you're going to improve them. And I guess maybe that's the kind of energy that I attract.
Yeah.
Other people who want the same for me. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
answer that I was looking for. Who knows?
Yeah.
But to close from my side, improve as a human being said 3 things. Understand yourself. Be honest with yourself. You might experience an ego death. And genuinely make friends who are categorically unafraid to stab you in the front at any given time, who you also have a good time with, because that's kind of important as well. But yeah, it has to be someone you like enough to actually be around. But yeah, so this is 3 things for me. It's worked. It's working. I hope it continues to work. But yeah, that's it from me. Ali Hamid, you wanna say something? You wanna close?
I'm gonna try to close this as quickly as I can. Not taking away from anything Ali said. Obviously, he opened up big time, and it's opening up is something. Yeah, you need to let it go and let it flow as much as it needs to. I think Ali will attest to this, and I've said this to many people who will probably listen to this episode, and I've said this on this episode. I've said this on this podcast like so many times. I consider 6 years as some of the hardest times of my life. 6 whole years. And it was at the 6th year I realized, yeah, I need to let go. And I did. We were talking about Instagram and everything. Fun fact, Tanya, I don't have Instagram.
Really interesting.
Got rid of it. It's been years
I
now,
got,
hasn't it?
it'll be 2 years this May.
Mm. Yeah.
It'll be 2 years this May. And I won't get into the reasons why I quit. That's a whole different conversation. And I've discussed it on an episode as well. If people will plug that episode at some point. But it's
Episode
just
10, season 1. Social media and
season
destigmatizing therapy, out now on all platforms. Sorry, continue.
intrusive thoughts for the win.
Indeed.
Yeah. So going back, 6 years of that was just pure. It was highs and lows. It was like a roller coaster of emotions. Because it was like 1 year I felt really good. Second year I felt all right. Third year I felt, where's this going? Where's this going low? Fourth year I went, okay, you made a big mistake, big blunder. Stop and recalculate things. Fifth year, things started looking up. Sixth, you were like, yep, I finally realized what it is and got rid of it. Got rid of all of the things that I felt were affecting me at the time. And I would definitely say I'm better off since. But obviously, I know at the back of my head, there is still things to fix. But I've reached that mindset, so to speak, of I know there is going to be a point I'll figure it out. All I have to do is just be patient and let things come as they go. I can get frustrated now. I can get frustrated even before. I can have a bad day after work, even today. But I know for a fact that in the long run, it's just going to be a little dot on the page. It's going to be a little blip in your life. Yeah, and I'm grateful that I've reached that point in my life now. Sure, I still have things to fix. I acknowledge that. But I feel like with time, eventually even those things will mend itself.
Oh, that's amazing.
And any closing thoughts, Tanya, before we close off the episode officially?
I think going back to the very beginning of the episode, movement is necessary. Fitness is important. You do not want to be 60 and you do not want to use the sink to get up from the toilet bowl and the washroom, right? You want to be able to get up on your own and
Yeah.
you don't want hip fractures. You don't want knee pain. You don't want back pain. You want to live a healthy
Yeah.
life with your loved ones.
Yeah.
So movement is important for you, not only physically, I also believe emotionally and mentally.
Yeah.
It just makes you a better human being all around. And I feel like keep growing, keep changing, you know. I'm so excited. Oh my God, knowledge excites me. And I just wish people could realize the value of things around them and just not, spend life watching
Yeah.
Netflix or whatever.
Education
Yes.
is the
Get out,
solution.
grow.
Education is the
Yeah.
solution to just about everything. That's a big statement. It's a lot to unpack. So you know
Yeah.
what? I'm gonna let y'all think about it instead of unpacking it. Education, in principle, education is the solution to everything. Education combined with self-awareness, combined with an acknowledgement of human
Such a
instinct,
big difference.
of
Such a massive difference.
combined with an acknowledgement of human instinct and natural human tendencies. If you can combine these three things, I tremor at the thought of what you could accomplish.
It's true.
Right. And all three of them are actually really simple, but it requires you to be alone with your thoughts, and it requires you to get really uncomfortable, right? As you said, Ali Hamid, you told me in numerous conversations, numerous media, numerous everything. In the strictest sense, it requires facing all your demons at once.
Yeah.
Right? And I just want to end the episode on one line, and exactly one line. I think that would serve as a motivator and as a sort of director and a starting point for everyone. Please consider the following. You have survived 100% of the bad days that you have experienced,
Excellent.
which means that your ego death and facing up against your demons, you're going to survive that as well. With that being said, this has been your host, Ali Adnan Rada, 2 hours in with my wonderful, wonderful, and very patient co-host.
Ali Hamid Saidi.
And our honestly, genuinely, for lack of a better word, illustrious guest, Tanya. Signing off. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.